Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first installment and only installment of Entrepreneurs for the fall semester. I'm Andy Richards. I'm the director of UW-Madison's Office of Discovery to Product, or D2P for short, and we partner with WARF to bring you this series each academic year. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land that we are on here at UW-Madison. The University of Wisconsin-Madison occupies ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Dejop since time immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed when both the federal and state government repeatedly but unsuccessfully sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. This history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation. Today, UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations of Wisconsin. So let me say a few words about Discovery to Product. Discovery to Product provides entrepreneurship and innovation training programs, coaching, and grants for UW-Madison campus innovators. We also coordinate the Innovate Network, a collaborative group of 19 campus and affiliated organizations working together to support entrepreneurship and innovation and to support and engage with people like you. I'd like to thank all of the Innovate Network members, including WARF, for coming together with D2P to prevent Innovation Week. This week-long series of 16 innovation and entrepreneurship-focused learning and networking events is designed to offer inspiration and practical tools to help you advance your ideas. As part of Innovate Week, D2P is hosting an information session for campus researchers in the sciences about the federal I-Corps training and funding program. That's tomorrow at 11:30 at D2P. And for those who don't know where D2P is just across the street from where we are right now. Today's terrific panel features 4 recent UW-Madison alumni who were startup founders and team leaders as undergraduate and graduate students. As they developed their ideas, they used multiple university resources, including the Innovate Network. The Weiner Center for Entrepreneurship in Wisconsin School of Business is one such organization and is a key to student entrepreneurship here on campus. Before we begin, I do have a few housekeeping items to share with you. This session will go right up to 5 p.m., at which point we'll adjourn and invite everyone to join us in the atrium behind us for our annual Innovate Week resource fair. For everyone, whether in the room or on Zoom, we want to encourage you to ask questions during the Q&A section of the event, which we plan to begin about 4:45. If you're in the room, please line up behind the mic in the middle of the room. And if you're on Zoom, we ask that you use the Q&A function of Zoom and not the chat. Your question will be read aloud, and we'll alternate questions between Zoom and those people here in the room. Now it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Cecily Brose, who will moderate this afternoon's session. Cecily is an amazing mentor and commercialization expert in our Office of D2P, or Discover to Product. Cecily has over 20 years of product and packaging experience in the consumer product industry, both in large food companies and in her own startup business. She is accomplished in building and coaching teams to drive impactful business results through innovation solutions, lean startup methods, and excellence in execution. Cecily holds a bachelor's degree in food science from Purdue University and a master's degree in food science from the University of Illinois. So now let me turn the floor over to Cecily and this wonderful panel. Thanks.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, well, thank you, Andy. I'm going to stand up for a moment and then I'll sit down with our wonderful panel. I want to welcome all of you. I don't know if you're feeling it today, but I'm feeling this electricity on campus. I don't know, it's something about the leaves changing and all the students being back and it being Innovate Week. I don't know if you had a chance to participate in any of the various panels or other forums that have taken place, but I think it's been a really great week. We continue on. We're going to have the resource fair after this session, and I'm here to talk with some of my favorite group of innovators on campus, and that is our, and they're alums now, but they were formerly undergraduate and graduate students. I feel such an electricity when I work with students on campus. And so I've had the opportunity to work with a number of these panelists, and I'm thrilled to be here leading a conversation about their amazing roadmap and things that they've done in with their now degrees from UW and their founding of their various companies. So let's have a conversation. Be thinking of questions that you want to ask, and we'll get to towards the end, okay? Okay, and do I have my panelists that are in the Zoom? Are they coming up? Max and Kirthana should be on our screen. Okay, while we're loading those, oh, there we are. Hello, friends. Hello. I'm going to talk to you from here. I can see you there. So we have a split panel today, which is kind of fun. It truly shows that our Badgers are out in the world and doing amazing things, living the Wisconsin idea. So thank you to Max and Kirthana for joining us virtually, and for Kit and Joel being here in person. I'm going to start out with a question for each of you to speak to, and really, what is your company's origin story? Tell me a little bit about the companies that you've founded or been involved in, and what your path has been to start up those companies. Kit, would you like to start?
Sure, I can start off with that. So as far as my first company, Boosted Shoes, I started that in my junior year of college here at UW-Madison, was majoring in bioprocess engineering and was looking for a way to use that somehow in a way that wasn't going to be at a plant, which I'd realized wasn't really my thing. And so stumbled across the Transcend UW entrepreneurship competition and decided to get involved with that club and some form or the other, and eventually built around the competition this company called Boosted Chews, which are caffeinated chocolate chews, that ran with my co-founder for about 2 years. Got involved with a lot of the resources on campus. That's how I connected in with D2P and a number of other great entrepreneurs in the Madison area. Spun that down after a little bit, realizing that I needed to have money once I graduated college. And so worked at Starting Block for a little bit as a communications manager. And that's how I met my current co-founders of Internship on Demand. So they had been working on this for a couple of years, also starting that after their experiences at UW-Madison and seeing the struggles that students had with finding internships and getting that first professional experience out of college. So joined in with them at the beginning of this calendar year, started off as part-time and really quickly became full-time, and then a co-founder with them. And it's been a really joy to kind of work with that and experience how I can give back to more students that can have the same experiences as me and be able to find increased opportunities with their early talent opportunities.
And Kit, where are you? You're in Chicago right now?
Yeah, I am currently living in Chicago. Moved there at the beginning of this year as well. And so been really tapping into that entrepreneurial community over there as well, and meeting a lot of startup founders, which has been really interesting, kind of seeing the differences between here, Milwaukee, Chicago, outside.
Great. Okay, Joel, would you like to go?
Awesome. Very impressive, Kit. My name is Joel, and I've only started one company, and I'm still running with it. And I think I'll give you a little bit of the background story. So my company is called My Home Stars, and it's a nonprofit organization, which I sort of restarted out from high school. So I grew up in Uganda, and specifically in a refugee camp. And one of the big problems that I had identified, I think, since I was like 14 years old, was how the education system in Uganda is. Typically in Uganda, when you turn 6, you start going to school, and then usually you rely on teachers as the main source of information. So you copy down notes, and then you use these notes to prepare for exams and all these good things you do at school. However, as a child, if I remember, one of the things I had not enjoyed about school was we used to just like cram content, and then if you did well on an exam, that was the end of it. And then part of it, I really didn't enjoy school. However, one thing I noticed was I love to play games a lot. And so when I was in high school, I was thinking back, I'm like, how can I contribute and help other children in my community who go to school have a little bit more fun in school, but also engage with the content and also with their peers. And it came down, this after like building multiple prototypes and also think about solutions like libraries and other things I could do. It came down to building board games. At first also I thought about building video games, but the fact that I was going to serve refugee camp communities, there was no way I was going to use video games. They would not work, no computers, no internet. So it came down to board games, and that's what we are doing with my company, My Home Stars. And how we are, I guess, tackling the problem of education is that we are getting the education curriculum of Uganda and then breaking it down into gamified content that children can use within board games. And then I've been doing that since 2017 when I got here. Got my co-founder, Anson Lea, who is not here, in 2018, and then we got together, participated in Transcend. I was very intrigued the first time I saw Transcend, wanted to participate so bad. We did 2019, we didn't even make it the second round. 2020 didn't happen, but then last year we participated again and then we came second. So Transcend has been a very good experience, sort of giving us feedback and then coming to participate again. So that has been what I'm doing with My Home Stars board games, and we are focusing on serving children who go to school in Uganda, mostly in refugee camps.
Excellent. Thank you, Joel. Okay, let's go to Kirthana. Kirthana, you want to unmute?
Yep. Hey, so I'm Kirthana, and the startup that I helped build is called Earth Repair, and basically it's started off in our lab, and we had, our lab group, we had this idea, we had this technology, which is like a carbon removal technology. It captures carbon dioxide directly from the atmosphere. So there is a need for that. I mean, the numbers don't lie. Climate change is happening. So that's where it all started. And then in 2020, the X Prize competition that was kind of like led by Elon Musk, led by the X Prize Foundation and funded by Elon Musk, they were having this really large competition for carbon removal technologies, and we realized we were eligible. So there was a student competition, we applied for that, and we got in. So that we won the $250,000 prize for that. And then that was serious validation for our technology, our thoughts, our entire team. So that was one of our main turning points, because now we had the idea, now we had the funding. We're like, okay, we've got something here in our hands, and we should do something more with it. So we kept going. We were like, let's go. We try to get incorporated, participate in D2P. Then we participated in the NSF Core program, started finding our markets, and it's still a progress that's ongoing right now, but that's kind of really where it all started for us.
Fantastic. And where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Tampa, Florida. I work here at an engineering consultancy firm called Arcadis.
Excellent. Okay, Max.
Okay. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Max Fergus. I'm actually calling in from New York. Graduated in 2018. My background was actually originally in finance. I was part of the investment banking club when I came to UW. Eventually got a job to go work at an investment bank in New York. But during my senior year at UW Madison, I got a little bit bored and actually started a think tank. In collaboration with a lot of other students on campus, the entrepreneur department, a lot of alumni. And basically we started looking at industries that were growing really rapidly, but had antiquated business models. Ultimately, music is a great example of an industry that fits that bill pretty well, right? An industry that's growing very quickly, but obviously, from a unit economics and royalty standpoint, most artists obviously aren't able to make a living income. So we started a company called Loom. It was a completely user uploaded social music community and streaming platform. We were actually the first music platform ever to implement a virtual currency. So this was actually like pre-crypto boom 2018, replacing the royalty business model with a model that allowed fans to really form closer relationships with their favorite musicians. It was a really exciting venture. I actually called my job on the day that I graduated and let them know that I wouldn't be coming in because I was going to be pursuing entrepreneurship full time. We grew the company to about 250,000 musicians, around 12% of the musicians in the US. We were Apple's app of the day, and and I think definitely we're able to be on the early end of what we now know as the creator economy, right? Which is all of us as individuals in a much more digital world being able to leverage our skill sets and online tools to create and grow our own brands and businesses. And we were just very early to do that in music. Now I've transitioned on to actually working in the Web3 and blockchain space at a company called Metaplex, a fully remote company actually, which is new for me, and live out in Brooklyn, actually in New York. But I'm always excited to get the chance to talk to students and come back to campus when I can.
Fantastic. Thank you, Max. Well, I think you can see we have a really great panel today. I'm excited to continue to talk to all of you. Let's start out talking about what is it like to be a student entrepreneur, and what challenges or adversities did you run into as you were, in your startup journey? Anyone can start.
I can start.
Okay.
When I think the day that I told my dad that I was going to potentially not pursue my investment banking job in New York and was going to start a music company, I think the exact words he used were, maybe I'll disown you. So I think there's definitely a lot of diversity that we all faced as student entrepreneurs. Only half kidding, of course. But I think it does a good job of showing, I think, one, honestly, the loneliness you feel a little bit as a student entrepreneur oftentimes, even though there can be such a great community of resources and a really supportive ecosystem on campus. I think that's like the first and foremost. Now, I think if you're really passionate about it, the passion and excitement of realizing that you can build things that people will use, to steal a Steve Jobs quote, sometimes heavily outweighs the loneliness of getting started. But I'll leave it to our three other panelists to maybe share some of the other struggles even and also highs of getting the opportunity to be a student entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big issues with being a student entrepreneur is, of course, balancing actually finishing a degree with actually doing a company. Both take a significant amount of time. I was personally very fortunate that when COVID happened, doing the degree stuff kind of got a lot lessened when people were trying to figure that out. So,
But do you remember me saying you are going to class, right, Kit?
yes, very well.
Okay.
So I think that was definitely a thing that I had to balance around time management. But beyond that too was really understanding what kinds of people I needed around me, because it became not so much of a thing of presenting myself as a student and more of a thing of trying to present myself as somebody who's working on a company. It's not a student project. It's not a student company. It is a company. It is a startup. And so making sure that I could put myself in that mindset and present myself to other people as that sort of persona and that sort of project that we were working on was, I think, an important mindset and presentation shift.
Yeah,
In lines with, oh, sorry,
Go ahead,
I was just
Shoshana.
I was just gonna add, in line with what Kit said, the only thing I'd want to add to that is like, it is a little difficult for people to start taking you seriously as a student, and when you have this idea and you're starting something on your own, or even with a lovely team. But I know I had to put in a little more effort in presenting my ideas or thoughts. So it's not only about giving your opinion, it's about kind of backing it up with the sources, how you came to that decision. It's something that we go through in any part of life, especially as a young professional, but just keeping in mind that we all have to start somewhere. So it's okay to put in that little extra effort to getting your point across. Don't get frustrated. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I think I wanted to also echo the point Mark said. I think I find it really exciting, the fact that you can build something from scratch and then see it come through. But of course, that also comes with the adversity that people are talking about. And I think for me, the biggest that I faced, at least when I was talking like to different people, you realize that people would ask questions, oh, how will you manage this when you're a student? I was doing engineering, that like, how would you manage all these ideas you're giving to us when you're also doing your degree? And that can be a little bit discouraging. And I think I personally, one thing that really helped a lot was that idea of being excited to build something new, but also understanding that if I can be able to pull this off, it can help someone. And for me, it was like constantly thinking back about like the kids, the community I grew up from, and what that would mean to them. And so that was sort of encouraging thinking back. Apart from like people asking the questions to your student, how will you do this?
I mean, all of you have juggled a lot to get to where you are today. And one thing I did want to talk about is, you know, as you came to campus and were in your various programs, you know, how did you even start to think that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, and what resources or people or services did you reach out to help you along this road or pathway?
Yeah, so yeah, I was majoring in bioprocess engineering. That constitutes working in a lot of large plant and manufacturing floors. And after a couple of internships, realized that I didn't have it in me to go drive out an hour and have to work in this like sort of very structured, continuously usual pace. And so stumbled into really Transcend UW, which was that club with that innovation competition. My friend was in a leadership position in the club, and I quickly said, why not? And just joined it, got into running that club as well. And that really propelled me into understanding what that whole Madison ecosystem was like, and meeting much of the leaders and the people that were in the space, building other startups. With Boosted Choose, we also proceeded on to get involved with Generator and D2P as well, where we had a lot of great mentors and resources given to us through being able to be in these sort of idea and early stage programs. G Alpha, G Beta were two of those Generator programs. We never had the chance to do any D2P programs, but know that they were really valuable as well, and got a lot of that sort of information and the access to network through people there as well.
Yeah, I could go next. I think talking about resources, I think one of the things that I've really found fascinating about UW-Madison, it's literally, I've not been to another university, but like the environment is very supportive in a sense that, for example, at Transcend, or like the students you meet, you find that once in a while you meet a student who actually understands you, and I think that really helps a lot. So students themselves, I feel like there's a lot of resources when you start talking to your friends or people you're going to with in class. You find that there's a lot of resources. Some of them will give you ideas, and that is very helpful. And then you've got resources like D2P, and then like professors who sometimes when say, for example, for me, I was in like mine is in education, and I would, for example, Google professors who have some experience in curriculum development, and then like it was easy for me to, for example, reach out to them here at UW-Madison. And I don't remember the times I reached out to a professor, even though I was in games, and then they said no. So I think professors themselves who are in a specific area that you're working with, they've been very, very helpful. And then the third one I can think about, I'm an international student. So some of the things that we do have sort of regulations on that. And entrepreneurship clinic, which I think has also been set up by the university, is very helpful for like young entrepreneurs who are thinking about the legal side of things. There's no way I could have figured out some of the things we've done and say entrepreneurship clinic has been very helpful. D2P as well, sometimes we've come in like still asking questions about legal side of things. So there's a lot of resources in the university that I personally found to be very helpful. You just have to go out there and then ask for some help.
Okay, Max or Kirthana, do you have anything to add?
I don't have too much to add. I guess my journey was a little different. You know, I wasn't going into this thinking I want to be an entrepreneur. I have this idea. It kind of just happened on me. So once we got the funding, we're like, okay, now we really have to get going. What do we do? So D2P is kind of where we started. And then, like Joel mentioned, the Law and Entrepreneurship Clinic, we had WARF. We had a grant from them. So there was an entire team kind of helping us through the process. But I would also suggest folks to join a bunch of mailing lists. I still get emails from the university from different professors. I found out about one today about the US Department of Energy. They are having a student competition for a business plan submission. I know this Madison, like the mayor, was doing something at some point, like the governor, sorry, had some kind of like support. So do look outside the university. There's so many competitions. There's like so many business pitch competitions that will come in very handy. Even if you don't win, I think it's great experience and things that you should keep in mind.
Absolutely. Clearly a lot of good, I think, advice just generally on where to find resources as you're thinking about your entrepreneurial journey. So maybe like two small pieces that I would add that are maybe a little bit of a different take. I think the general advice of finding mentors early on is something that I would definitely double click on. I probably have 2 or 3 mentors that have been with me every step of the way through my entrepreneurial journey. I would almost guarantee our 3 other panelists would agree as well. And they're worth their weight in gold, and there's definitely a lot of areas to find them. I think starting with obviously your professors, but also, the entrepreneurial ecosystem again in Madison is phenomenal, whether it's capital entrepreneurs or starting block. LinkedIn is an underutilized resource for those of you that haven't really started to leverage it. It is potentially the greatest resource of your career. But also, like your Thana said, I think a lot of the pitch competitions, we got our start at a pitch competition. If anything, it really forces you to think about your business in a way that you're probably not thinking about it yet. And it's kind of fun to do even as a side project while you're still taking classes. So a lot of different, I think, great bits of advice there, but mostly just echoing a lot of what everyone else has said.
So how do you go out and find those mentors? How do you find those advisors, those people that you trust that are going to help you along the way? Let's build upon what Max said. I'm curious. Any thoughts, perspectives? How do you approach that?
I was thinking about this in preparation for this panel, and it's a little bit like finding a partner in the sense that, you meet this person and, well, first it's like online dating where, it's LinkedIn, you're swiping yes, no. And then after that, I think really if you click with this potential mentor on the first date, like you're either relating on the topic, there's a passion there, and it really seems like there's good conversation, meaningful conversation during that first meeting. I think that's a good sign. And there's, like Max said, LinkedIn, definitely. It always starts somewhere. For us in our journey, it was our professors and then the larger extended community. So what we were doing, it was, in energy analysis and policy. So there's an entire kind of community for that at UW, and we've got the Nelson Institute. So honestly, just reaching out to any one person in the Nelson Institute, they don't need to be who you were looking for, but they will know kind of who can help you out. So yeah, network, just ask someone. They don't need to be your mentor at first.
Yeah, I think another thing too to find a mentor effectively is to make sure you understand what you don't know and what you need help on. I think that was a big thing that we were learning as we were starting Boosted Choose, was that you need to really understand where your gaps are as a founder in order to know what you need to fill in with mentors, with advisors, with other people on your team. And with being able to do that, you're also able to make more concerted, exact asks to people in your network. So instead of saying, oh, I'm looking for somebody who has experience in ed tech, it's I'm looking for somebody who has experience building curriculum for underserved communities in ed tech for manufacturing companies. You can kind of narrow these things down a lot more precisely and get to who you need a lot faster.
Joel, any thoughts?
Yeah, I could add something, and I think this has to do with, in addition to what he said, like not specifically what you need, but sometimes if I can take a step back, sometimes you actually don't know what you're missing or what you need, if I'm to be honest. But I think there's an opportunity whereby go to events and then try to talk to people generally, if that makes sense. And maybe someone could pick an interest, or you find that you actually have that passion and you connect with that person. Because like, it would be great, like actually all the time to know what you need, but sometimes I think I find myself to actually not knowing what I don't know. And so like going to events and then talking to people, it was sort of helpful to actually find other people or find someone who is willing to say like, hey, I know this person, I think it would be interesting to talk to. So go to events and talk to people as well, and they could connect you to other people that could help.
So how hard is it to put yourself out there in those events, like to walk in and not know anyone and make those connections? Like, what are some of the skills you kind of leverage as you go into those types of situations?
I think probably the biggest skill that you leverage is just learning to, like be confident. Like taking the time to reach out is like one of the most underutilized skills in the whole world, because not many people are ultimately willing to do it. Like I think that's such an interesting thing. Like, oh, why would I reach out to this person if they're, why would I reach out to the CEO of Noodles and Company if I really want to talk to them? Because, why would they ever respond to me? And then nobody ever ends up actually reaching out. And then somebody reaches out to them because they want to start a business creating their own homemade pasta, and they get a response. Like it really is like that. And it'll serve you well when you eventually start talking to investors and they tell you no 100 times before one eventually tells you yes. That skill set of not being afraid to go and put yourself in uncomfortable situations is, I think, like the DNA of many of the founders that that I've gotten the chance to speak with over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I think also on that, as you're putting yourself out there, being genuine about what you're trying to say or ask for. I think there's sort of a supposition that for networking events and these sorts of weird reach outs can be kind of shady or like not with like full intentions up front. But I've always found that it's a lot easier to just be actually genuine and like real about like you being interested in what they're doing and thinking that they might have an interest in what you're doing yourself, to make that connection. Ultimately, these sorts of networking events or putting yourself out there and growing the people that you know is not just counting up a number of people on a list of your contact lists on LinkedIn. It's like actually making connections. It's like actually getting to know people and being willing to support each other in both ways. So.
The one thing that I wanted to add is I completely resonate with everything that's been said, but you can also prepare to put yourself out there to the best of your ability, whether that's just practicing with yourself, with your team or something, but start somewhere where you're comfortable. If you're comfortable talking about your idea, your startup, that just talk about the idea and your passion on that. And then it tends to be a little more easier and natural going. But if you end up in a situation where, the conversation's really sidetracked, they're talking about something that's different, I think that's okay. That's actually nice. Just listen and maybe just ask questions that keep them on that path. And so something that I learned was, if we would talk about something that I had no idea what to say, I'd just be like, okay, I'd kind of ask leading questions, be like, oh, how come? Or like, why? And then I just write that down as like an ongoing list for me, such that I know to the next person, I either address this or I just know how to tackle it a little bit better. So it's okay if you get into that situation, just maybe listen and keep a note for the next time. I'm pretty sure the other person on the other end of the conversation isn't thinking about it too much. So don't overthink it.
Yeah, and I think in addition to the idea of not overthinking it, like I think anyone who has like tried to build a product, to work on something, they would understand that it's not easy. So I'm like, one of the things I'm learning is when you reach out to these people, they are very kind to actually listen to you and support. It's amazing how many people out there who are like willing to be mentors, and they understand that entrepreneurship is hard. So actually, I mean, like, I didn't know this 2 years ago, but I think people are more willing to listen to you and help you out. So I guess like also that can help with when you're nervous to reach out to people. The other thing that just popped in my mind is the idea of, I think I watch a lot of like YouTube videos about successful CEOs who have built products, and it looks glamorous, and the people, you will see videos of how this went from this in 2 months and then it exploded. One thing we've got to understand, not every company or every product you're working on will explode in 2 years. So I think there's a need to be patient. At least that's one thing I've learned. I think there's got to be patient to build a network or to meet actually the people who support you. Some of the emails we send, it will not work out, and that's okay. As long as I think you're patient and I think you're trying to play the long-term game, it's okay. Well, if your company explodes or your product explodes within like two years, that's great. But I think it could take 5 years. So I think if you're patient and you have few mentors, they will introduce you to other people, and part of it is because they see you actually being passionate about that and willing to push through. So yeah, be patient and keep working at it.
So that actually makes me think of another question around all of you. Kind of, I can see the passion that you have for your ideas and your products and the companies that you're working for and the roles that you are embarking upon. And how do you manage that passion from the standpoint of how do you kind of have the strong why as far as why you're doing this in entrepreneurship, and why is that critically important? And is it a challenge at times to stay focused on kind of the North Star of where you're trying to get to?
I could add that. Yeah, you just mentioned why, and I'm a big fan of, I don't know how many people here know Simon Sinek. He has this TED Talk video on why organizations like become big, and he talks about having a strong why. And I think for me, it's like what I'm doing is part of like a personal story, because like the products I'm building all go to like my community, and part of it is because like it's where I grew up from. So I feel like that gives me a why every day, and I think I found that to be very helpful, like actually working on something that you're really passionate about, because things are going to get hard, and sometimes just having the passion of building a product and seeing it successful, well, you might have 2 months whereby things are not going the way you wanted. And I think if you don't have a strong why or the reason as to why you're building that, you can easily give up. So for example, don't build a product because you think in 2 years it's going to make you a lot of money, right? So yeah, asking yourself, why am I building this? Or maybe it is going to improve lives of people, and that could be a strong why. Like it gives you like a reason to keep pushing, I guess.
That's the perfect answer. I think that was like literally took the words right out of my mouth. Like being an entrepreneur is hard, like super hard work. And I think like if you're not really passionate about what you're doing, then it's really hard to find that why. And I think also just taking a quote from like the Gary V world, like it's okay to not have like be on every single day, right? It's okay to have like an off day or an off week, and I think that's also something that's really important to keep in mind. But no, really great response.
The only thing I'd add is, definitely what Joel said, but like if you're looking as an entrepreneur, if you're looking for funding, the first thing they're gonna be asking is why. And if you don't have an answer for yourself, it's it becomes that much harder to answer it when you're talking to others. So it kind of goes back to what Kit was saying before about just being genuine. So kind of feeds into all of that.
Yeah, and I think also when you're looking for funding, especially at an early stage, investors aren't really making as much of a bet on your company as they're making a bet on the founders themselves. And so a lot of that is trying to demonstrate how into things you are, like how willing you are to dedicate yourself, how willing you are to understand every aspect of what you are working on and why it matters a lot to you. I think with my personal experience working on Boosted Chews, working on caffeine and chocolate was a lot of fun, but like at the end of the day, I wasn't really feeling like all that, intrinsically tied to the product itself. Not in the same way that nowadays with Internship on Demand, where we're building that platform to be able to help students get paid professional experiences and help companies build out early talent pipelines for being able to recruit for the long term. That's a problem that I've experienced personally. That's a problem I see all over the place and really feel like that's going to make a difference in people's lives. So I think making sure that you can kind of mesh these things together is a important aspect for making sure that you continue to have that why, especially when things get tough.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what do you see as the critical needs for UW-Madison student-led startups? And where are the gaps from your vantage point? So now you've been through UW and you're out in the world doing amazing things. And I'm curious, like, where do you see the gaps? We've got a room full of people here that are all supporting entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs themselves. What would you see as improvements that could be made in our ecosystem?
I've thought about this a lot over the course of the last couple of years going through Madison, and then ultimately ended up starting Loom in Madison after we graduated. We kind of made it our home, largely because of the resources that actually were in the state of Wisconsin and Madison specifically. Starting Block Madison, the amazing entrepreneurs that founded that ecosystem, as well as campus, and even just having a campus to ultimately draw from as consumers and people that were using our product. But I think with that said, as great as Madison is, and clearly one of the better entrepreneurial ecosystems growing in the United States today, there are definitely areas where we still have a lot of room for improvement. I think one of the biggest ones is absolutely funding. The truth is at a young stage or an early stage as a student, there's actually a lot of angel funding in Madison. I think we're very lucky from that perspective. But I think we do struggle to retain even seed stage and early stage startups because we really lack those $500,000 to $1 million or $5 million checks unless you're in healthcare or biotech. I think the other area from a campus specific perspective that we definitely have room to improve on is the relationship between the business school and other departments, specifically the computer science department at UW-Madison. That is a bridge. When you look at the top quartile of students at Madison from a business standpoint in a computer science department, they rival the best universities in the nation. Building a stronger bridge between those two departments specifically, I think, is an area that there's been a lot of work done, but there is definitely still a lot of room to go. So overall, though, more Fortune 500 CEOs came out of Madison than any other university in the U.S. So we're doing something right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think to that aspect, definitely a lot of staying power I think needs to be worked on with the Madison community. Being able to see student entrepreneurs come out of the university and bud and grow into full careers, I think is really exciting to see. But also seeing that there's kind of a ceiling a lot of the time to the growth that we're able to have in Madison for these people. So as we're continuing to develop out the entrepreneurial ecosystem, making sure that we have ways to keep people engaged as they move on into early stage, growth stage companies, whether that's with the community that is able to continue to give back and gain something from staying in Madison, or being able to connect into a wider network across Wisconsin. I know there's a lot of initiative these days to connect the communities between Madison and Milwaukee, as we see a lot of potential from Madison students and that technical ability, and Milwaukee with a lot of the sort of more business savvy and like working in those larger industries. So I think that's an important aspect that we need to continue to develop, as well as focusing on what Madison is good at, what Wisconsin is good at. We're not going to be the next Silicon Valley because like we don't have those resources, but we have so much else that is available to us in the state. And so making sure that we know where our specialties lie and strengths and tapping into that, leading into that is, I think, also something that we can continue to focus on more.
Yeah, again, echoing Max's point, to be honest, I think UW-Madison is up to something, especially like, at least from what I felt like doing engineering and my startup, I think there was a lot of support. But in addition to that, I think we need to have more platforms like Transcend, more platforms like D2P. Like one of the things I wish was like having Transcend like twice every year, because like it's not about the funding. It's really you getting in that competition, preparing, meeting these mentors in the evenings, and then them asking you questions and then giving you ideas. There's something about that gives you the training to be able to share your ideas and then you growing as a person. So I think if we can have more of these platforms, I think it will be really great. And then the other one, I think this is a little bit for a small group of people, but for like international students, I really found it very hard to like navigate the legal side of things because I've got to keep my visa. School is a priority for me when I'm here, but also I'm passionate about the things of building products and starting new things. So I think the entrepreneurship clinic was very helpful. Got on several calls with me and all that, but I think there's still like lacking of information on how do international students build products in the US on their student visa. So I think there is more help that's needed for international students, to be specific.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I don't think I have too much more to add. Maybe in general, like all the resources that I ended up finding out were through my professors. I'm really lucky to have had well-connected professors. I just hope that almost kind of every stage of people in Madison, I hope that they are aware of the resources that are available to them. So that's lab staff, lab managers, or like not group leaders, what orgs like our RSO, the RSO leads, professors. I just think better marketing to those folks that, you know, these resources exist because they're there. It's just finding them, which I found really tough.
Well, we have the resource fair right after this, so you all can you could talk to some of the resources that we have here on campus. Laura, I'm assuming you're going to pop in if there's a question online. I think we're at 15 minutes, I think. Oh, we're at almost 10 minutes left. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. Does anyone have a question here in the room? And then Laura can pop on and let us know if we have any questions online. Please come up to the mic, please.
So
Excellent.
thanks for doing it.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. There was talks about mentorship, right? And how do we ensure that it is a two-way relationship? Because, you know, so early in our careers, or, you know, just being a student, right? It's hard to provide value to the other person. I've noticed myself as just like taking value most of the times. So any thoughts on that would be great.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the time, we're probably not going to be able to give that much value back to a mentor immediately or for a good while. But one thing is that with most people who are in a stage where they can provide mentorship, they've received so much without having to give back on that front. So it's really kind of a way of, you know, passing it on, you know, giving the torch forward, and you know, eventually you might be able to give more of an advisory board or panel position for your mentors if you decide to bring them in as like an equity holder for your company. That's of course, you know, as a relationship develops, and make sure that, you know, there are those aligned interests for the long term. But Ultimately, I think it's just something that's a really great aspect of the entrepreneurial community here in Madison and elsewhere, that people are just willing to give, and that's what makes it all stronger.
And speaking, if I may, I'm not, but speaking from a mentor standpoint, there's so much reward that we get just intrinsically in having these conversations. It's exciting to see people have ideas and things that they're passionate about, strong whys, needing something from us from a mentoring standpoint. And so I would never be afraid of that. Like, I just talk to people, and you know what? If they don't want to talk to you, they probably weren't a very good mentor to begin with, right? So, they're gaining something from that experience, and being able to help others succeed is a lot of the reason why people mentor. And you don't have to have 25 years of experience to be a mentor. We're all mentors to each other in life, right? So. Even a peer-to-peer mentorship can be very beneficial and to each other. And so don't be afraid of that. Any other thoughts from the panelists?
I would just
It's a great question.
I would just say, like from what you said, I don't think there's much value you can provide to them. But I think when I think about it, it's be passionate and say when you ask for a meeting for 1 hour, make good use of their time. I think that's how I see it. I think that's the value we can provide to them. At least like when we ask for the time, let's make the best use of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Do we have any other questions in the room? Okay, come on up. Yep.
Hi, I was wondering, was there any advice that you were given that at the time you disagreed with, but looking back, you think it was actually good advice and maybe you should have followed it?
Oh, excellent question. I like this one. Let's dig into this one.
I can kind of answer that, I hope. So for me, it was mostly during the NSF I-Corps program. So I'm an engineer. I don't think like an entrepreneur. It was completely new to me. And so it started off with them being like, oh, you need to focus on like, of course, finding the market, but don't talk to them about your technology. Just understand what they want. And I'm like, how will I know what they want if I don't talk about my technology? And it took me like a good 10 interviews to kind of change that thinking, when I was like, damn, I can actually get what I want without talking about myself or our technology. And I don't know, sometimes I think it's just trust the process, especially when the thinking is very different from what you're used to. If you don't know better, and it's against your gut feeling, maybe just trust the process for a little longer.
Yeah, I think especially in pitching, when that was an area I think where I got a lot of that. It's very true that you are the only person who can't see some of your flaws, especially when you're pitching your product or your business. And so that's a very hard thing sometimes to understand, but looking back on it, at the end of the day, you really are, especially in your startup, really just the perception of how people perceive you. Even if you know what the problem is and you know how excited it is and what you're trying to articulate, really taking some open and honest feedback to heart of kind of how you're articulating what you're trying to get across is sometimes a hard bullet to bite. But looking back on it, there's probably a lot of nuggets of information that I could have taken and probably used to create a more concrete story, around what I was trying to build. As entrepreneurs, especially anything pre-Series A, we're really selling the dream, and so that pitch, just like when you're trying to get into a investment bank in school, is almost all about how you interact with people. And it's a really great area to get a lot of feedback, because that's, like Kit said earlier, that's what people are ultimately investing in more than anything else early on, people are investing in the founder of a startup than anything. You know, especially when you're still looking for some of the first funding that you're getting.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with these things. As a team of co-founders of people with engineering backgrounds, we're all about the granularity and the numbers and not the big picture. So it's been a process of switching into that. But I think another thing has also been making sure that we're able to sort of portray ourselves in a way that you know, is in line with what we have for our mission and vision, and not in a way that is going to solve the immediate like next goal that we have, if that makes sense. I think the advice that we've gotten before is that, oh, you should like make sure you have a mission vision in mind and be able to commit to that. And we're like, well, that's kind of dumb. That's kind of like wishy-washy, like, you know, high level stuff. We got to focus on the real problems. But it does kind of guide what problems you focus on. You don't have unlimited time. And so making sure that you can use some sort of North Star to decide what you focus on and what you cut out, I think is something that continue to work on and make sure that we can handle, because, you know, other people have been through it before, and you can only work so much until you burn out and, you know, crash. So you need to make sure you sort those things properly.
Yeah, an example I had, so with us sort of building games that are focused on the educational curriculum, I don't have much knowledge. I keep learning about the Ugandan educational curriculum, but most of the time we've got to work with teachers to say develop and update the content. And it happens like last year, we needed to, with COVID and schools being closed, there was some updating that we needed to do to build new content. And one of my mentors, the advice was, the teachers in the village can't necessarily use computers. They're not so fast, but they can write things down. And then also like, they still know their content. So the advice was get the teachers from the city, get the computers, and then let them develop the content. However, from the beginning, I've always wanted to like work directly with the community and also involve teachers. And of course, we had an opportunity of working with teachers from the city and doing it very quickly. However, I was really not comfortable. I was a little bit stubborn. So we started working on the content in my, like during, I think it was about October last year, but then we couldn't get it done by December. And then when I went home in December for a break to see my family, I had to spend time working with the teachers to fix a few things and have it done. So I guess that I was stubborn on that one, but I think at the end of the day, I was happy that we're continuing to work with the community directly, but also like one of the things I know is at the end of the day, they will own it and they know they've been part of the process. So I think understand why, even when you're stubborn, I think even when things go wrong, you still have a strong why as to why you choose a direction rather than just being stubborn. So I'm assuming when you become stubborn, you have a reason as to why, and you're comfortable with that.
Great. Okay, we're at 4:59. So I don't think we had any other questions online. So I want to thank our panelists. We know that time is precious, and especially for entrepreneurs and innovators. And so we want to thank you for your time with us today. I think it was a wonderful conversation, and there are a couple of things I want to mention, but especially I want to thank you for sharing your stories. I know that this, you know, being up here and sharing these lessons learned helps everyone in the audience, not just our student entrepreneurs, but all of us as we work with this community of people, but also work on establishing our own ideas and products and companies going forward. So I want to invite everyone to stay for the Innovate Resource Fair. That is Innovate Week Resource Fair that's starting now in the atrium, so just out to the right here. Please feel free to visit the D2P Innovate Network table to sign up for our newsletter to stay informed. A couple of people touched on that in our panel about the need to stay informed of activities and events happening. Also, I want to mention that on November 18th, There's going to be a webinar with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And I'm not sure if it's going to be back here in the DeLuca or not, but where you can learn about funding and internships available to campus and community innovators and startups in relation to the Homeland Security. So that's really exciting. I think that's a newer program that we're going to be discussing. And all of that should be in the Innovate Network newsletter that you're going to sign up for if you haven't signed up for it yet. So I want to thank you all. It's been a wonderful conversation, and thank you to our panelists.
Want to share with you. Did you ever go to the Cinema Tech Cinema Hall? It's actually a very good program tonight, 7 o'clock. It's about a Asian American family in Michigan. They set up a store, and it's their struggles for COVID. Do you know